Hello friends, my name is Bintou and welcome back to my channel for today's video, which is my September wrap up. So I'm going to go through all the books that I read in the month of September, which disclaimer isn't too many. It was somewhat of a busy month, and one of them was an audiobook, so it's not listed here. Couple things though, just to get out of the way is you'll have to excuse my voice a bit. I am recovering from a very long weekend of COVID. So I'm still a little bit stuffy. And also this sweater, it's a very nice sweater. I love this sweater, but there's literally no place to clip a microphone onto. So I'm going to be holding my mic, which I normally don't really love to do, but I'm out of options today. So with all that out of the way, we're going to go ahead and get started. Be sure to leave a comment below letting me know your favorite book that you read this month. And if at any point you like the video, be sure to let me know by liking the video. I'm definitely excited to hear what kind of books you guys are kicking off fall with. All right, so the first book I want to talk about is Listen for the Lie by Amy Tintera. And I think this actually is the first book that I read this month, coming off of like the straight thrillers that I was reading and talked about in my last video release. So a little bit about this book. This is another podcast style crime thriller. And I know we've been seeing a lot of those lately, but hear me out. This one's actually really good. So the main character, her name is Lucy, and she's currently living in LA after leaving her hometown in Texas because everyone in the town has basically accused her in like the court of public opinion of having killed her best friend, even though there's not been enough proof that she actually was charged with the crime. And she herself has amnesia, so she doesn't actually remember what happened the night of the murder, but she was there. So she kind of woke up the day after and was found on the side of the road walking around like a kind of out of sorts. But of course, none of this matters to people that live in the town. They all think she did it, and she couldn't really continue to live there, so she left. So the podcaster, his name is Ben, and he had just come off of a different season where he solved a cold case on his podcast, and now he's moved on to this particular case involving Lucy, and he's got in contact with her, trying to get her to come back to her hometown and help him in interviewing people and getting this murder solved, and potentially clearing her name if she didn't actually do it. All right, now on to why I really love this book, and it has to do with the characters. And in particular, I would say the main character, Lucy, is just so daggone entertaining. Like you get access to like her thoughts and the comments that she makes to people as they're kind of annoying her. And she's just, if you're like a fan of dark, sarcastic humor, you're really going to love her. And even better, I would say, is her grandmother, who is like, she's like the grandmother that is, really on in age, and knows she's probably close to death's door and just does not give a darn about anything. She will make her opinion known, and she is like the biggest supporter of her granddaughter. They make such a great team, and I loved reading from both of their perspectives. It was awesome. The grandmother is also basically drunk in like all her appearances, which is like a running theme, which probably also makes her even funnier in my opinion. Also, I would say this book does have a pretty good level of suspense. It's a good thriller, and I would say that the twist is unexpected, unpredictable until you're pretty much already there. I wasn't really able to predict it. And surprisingly, something I don't really see in very many thrillers, there's like a small little romance twist, and it gets like kind of spicy, something that you actually rarely see in mystery thriller. In fact, I would say the only thing that I disliked was like as you get to the twist, the main character was kind of made out to be this person, and she kind of deviates from that in a way that I feel like doesn't really make sense. And it probably is just shock, right? She was in a shocking situation, and that could explain it away. I just prefer when characters are sort of consistent with their character throughout the entire novel, and it doesn't just change for like the sake of a twist or to try to create drama in a scene, if that makes sense. Overall, I still give this about 4.5 stars. I would definitely recommend, if I had read this in time for my original thriller book, this would be high up there for sure. And actually, I just wanted to quickly double check. This is actually a debut adult novel for this author. And this is a really good mystery thriller novel. So kudos to the author on a really job well done. All right, so the next book I want to talk about, I don't have a copy of because I really just listened to it on audiobook. And this book is James by Percival Everett. I'll stick a picture maybe here somewhere. Now, this book has been getting a ton of hype. I see it everywhere, whether it's online or in person at bookstores. And I think on Amazon, it is listed as like their #1 for best books of the year so far, which is the main reason I wanted to go ahead and listen to it. So this book is essentially a retelling of the adventures of Huckleberry Finn, except it retells the whole story from the perspective of Jim, who's a slave that is owned by Huck's family. Now, I personally have never read The Adventures of Huck Finn, so I'm not really familiar with the story at all. But I will share one of the criticisms that I've seen for this book, as people are just saying it's not technically original because it's just a retelling of the story. I guess maybe the pro, okay, if we're looking at like the positive of that, is that it's getting people that haven't ever read Huck Finn into the story. And maybe now one day I will pick up Huck Finn because I will say I really did enjoy James. I thought it was a fantastic book. Again, I didn't read it. I listened to the audiobook, and the audiobook was great. I would say even if you do read it, definitely try to pick up that audiobook for this. So the basic premise is that Jim, who is a slave, he overhears that he's going to be sold, which means that he's going to be separated from his family, and he doesn't want that. So he decides to run away and become a runaway. And it just so happens that the same night that he decides to run away, Huck fakes his own death and then also decides to run away because he hears that his dad is coming back to town, and his dad is violent and he just doesn't want to live with his dad anymore. So now when Huck accidentally runs into Jim, Jim realizes like, oh shoot, now I'm a runaway, and they probably also think I murdered Huck. So they're stuck together, and they basically have to survive as they travel down the Mississippi River, ideally toward freedom, but also just staying alive and staying out of the hands of like everyone that's searching for them, basically. Now, I would say most of the book is centered around the character Jim, so you kind of have to like him as a character to like the book. And luckily, he actually is a very well-written character. I really enjoyed following his story. I think that what makes him such a complex character, and the author does a really good job of this, is that he's just clearly a very, very intelligent man, but he's sort of forced to live within the confines of being a slave in the time in which that he's alive. And in this book, you kind of get an insight into like his thoughts and the things that he's thinking, and sort of the irony of it all as he's interacting, like his thoughts as he's also interacting with the white people that are in his town, trying to make sure that they don't see him as more capable or knowledgeable than he actually is. But at the same time, he's also like, he's a realistic character, but he also is like a hopeful character. So it isn't like entirely doom and gloom, you know, he's got some hope throughout the story, which I think is important in a story like this. And I mean, overall, this really did feel like an adventure as I was listening to it. Overall, I give this 4.5 stars. I definitely understand why it's listed as one of the best books of the year so far. I think it really is one of the best books I've read, or I guess listened to, of the year so far. I don't know if it is the best. Like I don't know if I'd give it the #1 spot, but it is a well-written book, and it would be worth your time if you were considering picking it up. All right, next. So we've got 2 romances coming up. So the first one is Abby Jimenez's Just for the Summer. Now, I love Abby Jimenez. She's pretty much an auto-buy author for me because she's one of those romance authors that just tells a really, really strong story. And it's usually not just straight up romance. In fact, her books are not super romance heavy to begin with. She's always got something, some sort of tragedy usually that is incorporated into her novels, and this one is really no different. So the 2 main characters in this book are Justin and Emma, and they actually meet on Reddit, which I think is pretty funny for a romance novel. You can tell it's very contemporary. So the thing is that Justin and Emma both believe that they have this curse where the people that they date, then after they broke up, go on to find their soulmates. And so their thinking is, well, we both have this curse, let's date each other, and then after we broke up, maybe then we'll go on to find our own soulmates. Again, that's like a very basic premise, but this does become, it's a very complex love story. So you have one character, Emma, she's dealing with a super like narcissistic, neglectful parent and sort of the effects that has on her into adulthood. And then you have the other one, Justin, who suddenly finds himself becoming the guardian of his siblings because of something that happened to his parent. And they have to navigate all of that on top of their like new relationship that seems to be something that is turning into more than they had imagined. I think that this is a really great romance book for the non-romance readers because there is like not actually, there's like no spice in this book that would scare anyone away who's like not into the genre. But it's a strong story. Like it's gonna make you cry, or it made me cry. I think more than once as I was going through this entire book. And this is why I love Abby Jimenez's work so much, is that she does a fantastic job balancing that with humor. So like there's like a running joke in this book of this like Toilet King billboard, this giant billboard of a toilet, that continues on throughout the book, that is based somewhat on a real life, I think it was like Minnesota thing. But the real life version is not a toilet. I can't remember what it was. She mentioned it in like the author's note. But I feel like those are the details that make it such a good story. I also love the friendship that is in it. So it's not just like a romance story. There's also a really, really strong friendship between the main character and her best friend, Maddie. And they're both travel nurses. So they have been traveling together and like picking different locations for a really, really long time. And you can just tell how much they love each other, and how much they like need each other as well. Overall, I give this book 5 stars. I actually really enjoyed it and I would highly recommend it. Not even just for the summer. If you're just looking to try romance, this is a good one for sure. And then our second romance here is Katherine Center's The Rom-Commers. I picked this up a bit ago. It's fairly new release. I just hadn't immediately read it, and it's so pretty. Like, look at those page edges. It's sprayed pink. It's a very bright novel. Although it's not like a bright, happy story, at least not mostly. This is kind of one of those like meta romance novels because the main character is a screenwriter of romance, but movies, I guess, instead of novels. So Emma, the screenwriter, is sort of tricked by her agent to going to Los Angeles to help out one of her idols. His name is like Charlie Yates. And he's supposed to be like this big name screenwriter. But he's been tasked with writing a romance movie for reasons that are later explained in the book. And he apparently sucks at it. So she read his screenplay, she wrote up a bunch of notes, and it just wasn't good. But the thing is, he didn't know she was coming, so the agent tricked both of them, basically. But when she gets there and sort of explains her notes, he's pretty impressed, and so he lets her stay in his house, so that they can write this screenplay together. Just like with Abby Jimenez's Just for the Summer, there's some complexity to the story. So Emma is also the caretaker of her dad. She's like the main caretaker for dad, who was disabled in an accident that had also killed her mom. And then the other guy, Charlie, he's got some health scares that he's dealing with as well. I still think Abby Jimenez does it better, but this is a really good effort at like a nuanced, complex love story. I think that one of the main points that the author really wanted you to walk away from by the end of this book, and I think you'll get it because it comes up several times, is that this idea, and it is a very true statement, that romance novels, romance movies are just not taken as seriously as other genres of literature or film. But her point is that those stories still matter and they're really important to a lot of people. And I think that's very true. That's a very fair point to make. Overall, I give this book 4 stars. It was another fun, enjoyable read, and I really liked it. I have one other book by her that I meant to read before this, but hadn't gotten around to it, that I will definitely be picking up. And then, actually, the final two are going to be the end of the Mr. Mercedes trilogy. So that's going to be Finders Keepers and End of Wash I have down here. I read both of them this month. So I was able to actually finish the entire series in a matter of 2 months because I think I read Mr. Mercedes last month. So Finders Keepers is one of those stories about a character that is like obsessed with an author who wrote a different character who, was it Carrie? I can't exactly remember which other book that Stephen King wrote that's like that. And I read that and it was great. This was also pretty good too. So this time the character's name is Morris, and the author is John Rothstein. And so Morris does not like what John Rothstein did to his favorite character. It was Jimmy something, I can't exactly remember. So he decides to do what any sane person or reader would do, and he essentially breaks into the author's house with 2 other accomplices. They steal his cash and they steal manuscripts. So he suspected that the author kept writing even though he had already retired. And he was right. So there were manuscripts that continued the story along. And that's really what he was after. He really wanted to read the manuscripts. Now, unfortunately for him, he goes off and like the very same night goes and commits some other unrelated violent crime. And he gets picked up for that and gets sent to jail for a very, very long time. So he never actually gets to read the manuscripts that he had put all this effort into obtaining. And it's like the only thing he's looking forward to in life, basically. Now, some kid does find this stuff in the hiding place and uses the cash to like help out his family, but then he gets himself into a lot of trouble when he tries to sell the manuscripts. And funny enough, the kid himself is also a really big fan of the author and the character, so it kind of worked out. It was like kismet, if you will. I thought this was a really good sequel. The Finders Keepers team, so Bill, Jerome, and Holly, they're like a more minor role in this book. They're not the main role here, but they do their supporting role well. And I feel like King does a really good job connecting like the original events of Mr. Mercedes into here, where the characters are somehow related to the event that sort of triggered all of this. And then that brings us to End of Watch, which is the very, very last book. It's funny, before I picked this up, I was thinking like the cover just doesn't match the other ones, Finders Keepers and Mr. Mercedes. And after reading the book, you understand why. You understand sort of the meaning behind the images on this cover. But still, I still kind of really wish they would match, just for like aesthetic reasons. But I get it. All right, so End of Watch, and Brady Hartsfield is back. So that's a Mercedes killer, and he is actually all there, or mostly all there, like Bill Hodges has suspected, but he's kind of been tricking people into thinking that he's still kind of like brain dead, essentially. But he's not like just all there. He's also developed this supernatural ability to essentially like take over people's minds if he can get them susceptible enough, like put them in like a trance or hypnotic state, basically. So he learns that he can take over, for example, his doctor, actually, and then also his janitor. And he can do it through this like video game device that's totally outdated, doesn't even work. But it kind of puts the users into this sort of hypnotic state. So like the premise itself seems strange, but it is the kind of strange that Stephen King does so well. And I would say this book is definitely on the longer end of the trilogy, but that's important because it beautifully lays out the details of Brady's plan. And so you can see how things progress, and it just makes sense, even though this is technically, like, you have to sort of suspend reality, but also it still makes sense, It's that very special Stephen King kind of strange. Now, that being said, huge, massive trigger warning for suicide for this book. It's kind of a central theme throughout the entire book, and it includes young people, like teenagers, also committing suicide. So that's definitely something that Brady himself, the Mercedes killer, was obsessed with, and it sort of continues on in this novel. Overall, I think this was a great, if not somewhat sad, ending to the Mr. Mercedes trilogy, and I'm so glad that I picked up the trilogy. I really enjoyed the series, and really Holly was the reason I picked it up, and she was absolutely fantastic. But I also got to love Jerome and Bill Hodges himself. Overall, I would say it was a 5-star series, and both of these books were at the very least 4.5 stars. And if you are thinking or on the fence about reading the series, I would definitely recommend it. All right, friends, those are all of the books that I read this month. Again, definitely drop a comment below letting me know what the favorite book that you read this month was. If I have to choose, it's gotta be between, I think Abby Jimenez's Just for the Summer, just because this was the only book that made me cry this month, and it did it more than once, so it was a powerful story. And then maybe Listen for the Lie as well, just because this was so funny. And I really, really love the characters in here. Obviously, I love everything Stephen King does, but these were like two new, unexpected surprises. So I'm going to go with those two. Between these two, I can't even pick because they're totally different genres, but both very enjoyable. And overall, actually, a pretty good reading month. These were all really solid reads. If you're still watching, thank you so much. I appreciate it. And I hope you guys have a good one, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.